Sukuna's relationship with Yuji throughout almost the entirety of the JJK anime is very interesting to say the least. Their relationship is just one of those kinds of things that you've seen in a little of their few animes that usually are involve demons or anything else been residing inside of somebody. But I have a very big question that I've been wondering since I first started JJK. What would have happened if Yuji never actively ate that finger? What would have happened if the circumstances between that completely changed and he never ended up doing it? Would he have been able to stay a normal student? Would he have joined Jujutsu Tech instead? Or what would have happened entirely? So to actively get this started, let's set up the situation. In this, it's right before Yuji's actually about to eat the finger in any kind of circumstances. And instead, this time to actively make this work, I'm going to say that Gojo actively arrives just a little earlier than he did. Obviously, this couldn't have happened in the actual, obviously, canon and everything else like that. So this is just a hypothetical version of what could have possibly happened. But just hear me out. There's obviously a lot of ways that this could have gone, between Yuji just automatically dying and a lot of so many other things possibly happening. But in all honesty, if he actively didn't eat the finger, it would have changed up the entirety of the story so much more. So we go in with Yuji not eating the finger, Gojo showing up and being able to deal with the cursed spirit just barely. And it gets to the point where Yuji's actively being saved. Since he never ate the finger, he doesn't have to worry about anything along the lines of, oh, he's Sukuna's vessel. He's Sukuna's perfect vessel. So he's going to be very dangerous and he has to automatically die no matter what. Just completely dead. Since all of that never happens, with Megami knowing how strong Yuji is and seeing everything that Yuji has done, I would think that he might actively invite and tell Gojo that this guy is extremely strong, and he would invite him over to become an actual member of Jujutsu Tech. Gojo probably would find Itadori extremely interesting, to say the least. So I highly think that this could be a very possible situation, possible scenario that could have easily happened. Afterwards of all of that, Yuji would obviously just go over to Jujutsu Tech and have the meeting with the principal, obviously under different pretenses and circumstances this time around. Yuji, obviously not having Sukuna, it wouldn't be as hard for him to get in because obviously he has Gojo's vouch for him and everything else like that. And he would actively be very, very easily able to not really get in because obviously he doesn't have any real cursed energy techniques or anything like that as of yet. But his obscene strength and abnormal strength and everything else like that gives him some kind of thing to work on. So even though he doesn't have very high cursed energy or any cursed energy that he can use at the moment, he would be able to make his way into Jujutsu High and actively join. Since there's not going to be very much waiting, Gojo would still set up an actual uniform for Yuji, and it's going to be the exact same one. That's not going to be bothered to changing, and they would eventually end up going to find Nobara and dealing with all of that. They would make it over to her, and I honestly think that most of that obviously would go the same way because obviously he's not the vessel for Sukuna, so there wouldn't be really any very big things going on around here. And I honestly think that afterwards, Gojo would still end up taking Yuji and Nobara into that apartment building and apartment complex to do exactly what they needed to do. And it would just kind of make a lot more sense, and just to test Nobara, to be completely honest. And he would still give Yuji the axe to kind of just do exactly what he needed to do and actually even be able to make any dents and everything. As that situation would obviously go the exact same because Yuji didn't actively end up using any of Sukuna's finger for that and anything else like that. So that would obviously go perfectly without a hitch. There wouldn't end up being an actual prison arc where they end up having to go to the prison to deal with a cursed womb, specifically due to the fact of Yuji doesn't have Sukuna's finger. So there is no reason to send 3 newbies all the way out to deal with this potential special grade in any circumstances. The higher-ups have no reason or desire to even want to kill Yuji, so there would be no point in even dealing with that. They would send somebody else most likely to deal with that, and that's honestly my opinion, that they wouldn't bother dealing with Yuji or anything else like that, so none of that would even happening. Yuji wouldn't end up dying, there wouldn't be any mourning or anything else like that, and Yuji wouldn't be stuck alone like all of that. I still think that Gojo would probably spend some time trying to actively teach Yuji how to use cursed energy and cursed techniques the same way that he did. But obviously Yuji not being dead, they could actually do it in the open and everything else like that, and they could actually get some help just via other people around there. Obviously next up would be dealing with actually the other like second years like Maki like and everyone else coming over and dealing with all of that, getting ready for the actual events to actually be taking place in. Yuji would actively be there this time around. There would be no reason for him not to be there. Yes, he's training with Gojo, but him and Gojo could actually set up times for them to do the training with, and Gojo being able to focus on Itadori and not really have to keep him a secret and hiding anything else like that probably would help quite a bit. Yes, obviously Yuji wouldn't be able to just work 24/7 dealing with watching movies the same way that he did, but Gojo could probably most likely find another way to actively get Yuji to be trained in whatever possible way that he would need to be trained. All of that would be fairly simple. And of course, there would still be the event of like Ghetto and everything else like that at the coffee shop, talking about the actual like cursed prison and everything else like that, like the actual like just prison curse and everything else like that. And that would still be talked about, getting Jugo to actively want to attack Gojo, and that fight would still end up happening. There's no chance that that fight's not happening. And Gojo, I probably think that he probably would still invite Yuji, specifically just due to the fact of him wanting to and just showing Yuji exactly what's going on and exactly everything else like that, which would be honestly quite interesting to see because he doesn't have Sukuna's finger. So there's not really much difference in this specifically, but the main difference that would end up happening if he ate Sukuna's finger would be he wouldn't be a target for death every single moment of every single day. That wouldn't need to happen. There would be no need for that to happen. It would just be him basically chilling out, doing whatever he feels like and doing whatever he really needs to be doing as time goes along. And speaking of, obviously we would get to the point where like we would see Yuji interact with a few of the other people, obviously. So he would be introduced to Todo and like Mai. And obviously I'm honestly thinking that him and Todo probably would end up having probably a fairly good relationship off bat, since he's not dead and he's not like completely just missing out of entirety. I feel like they could obviously have a very cool relationship even earlier than anything else before. Them meeting with each other would probably give them that little brotherly connection that they automatically like they have later on. And I honestly see that happening way earlier this time around. So I don't see there being any kind of fight where anything else has to happen. And there is not going to be any like real confrontation between them two, like well, between those two groups. So most of that would be fairly decently handled automatically quickly. The next thing that really probably would change a little bit is with actually like Yuji and like Nanami. I don't really see that Gojo just like bringing Yuji along, or like in bringing Yuji along just like specifically with Nanami alone. I don't really see the point of that, or why that kind of even would end up having any possibility of happening. I feel like Gojo might still bring Yuji along, but I think it would more likely be in a situation where he also brings along like Megami and Nobara and anything else like that, because like there wouldn't be any real need to kind of hide it and keep it alone. So I see them along with Nanami actively going there and seeing exactly what happened. Obviously, though other two being there would change at least a good portion of the events, they would be able to deal with things obviously quite a bit easier. And eventually when Yuji would meet Junpei, because I feel like he probably still would, there would obviously be Megami and Nobara probably being along and tagging along with him and meeting him and everything else like that. And a majority of those events, specifically revolving Junpei, probably would end up going the same, because Yuji is basically in essence the exact same person. And especially like when Junpei's mom dies, and I think that probably would still happen, especially like when she dies, Yuji probably would still do the exact same thing, and all of those events would really end up happening the same way. The main difference is when it comes to anything relating along the lines of like right before Junpei actually ends up dying, Sukuna's not there, so Yuji has no one that he could actively like try targeting to and talking to even try saving him. So the only thing that he can do is actively just do everything himself. And with Gojo actively being able to still train him, obviously, and having other people to be around side with him and train him and at least help him out. Obviously, they would have found it a drag and everything else like that, but having a few other people to help him out, he's able to do at least a few more things than he was able to. So he's actually able to get some actual good, decent hits in. And eventually, like obviously, like Nanami and everything else like that is still around, so they're able to deal with some things fairly easier, with Yuji still being able to break into the actual domain expansion on all of that, things still happening the exact same way, and like everything just kind of going basically the exact same way in this specific circumstance. And really the biggest difference that would end up happening, the actual event where they have to deal with killing the grade 2 curse between the two schools. This one would go quite a bit differently. This time there's not going to be any real interaction between anything, and there's not going to be any real problems between them because there is no reason to want Yuji dead. The fact that there's no reason to want Yuji dead changes so many things, specifically due to the fact that Yuji and Todo are already like going around with each other and going like my best friendo and like talking about like each other being each other's best friends and everything else like that, which of course that's going to be something I'm going to keep because I love that. Like who doesn't? But obviously we're going to have it be like, since there's no reason to kill Yuji, the events would go on basically as normal. That obviously is until they get attacked by like Mahito and the rest of the actual cursed spirits and everything else like that. With all of that happening, that really changes quite a bit, and the teachers still come in rushing in the same way, and it still basically takes them around the same amount of time. Obviously, since mostly everyone wasn't focusing on Yuji, it would kind of really change up exactly the lineup of everything else like that. So I could say for like most of that would end up happening the exact same circumstances, but there is obviously the other chance that Yuji and Todo could have possibly came in earlier, helping like everybody else really with the situation, and I'm going to really want to take that route just because basically those two would really just be clicking in almost perfectly. They're clicking in with each other precisely. No problems, no nothing. They're out here just completely already in their perfect groove and their own perfect movements and everything else like that, and they're not even having any problems. Yuji would still be able to really do the exact same moves that he has been able to, and it would actually cause so much more damage in the entirety due to the fact that Yuji's actually been able to do quite a bit more and actually grow quite a bit more with his understanding of cursed techniques and cursed energy and actually just everything along those lines entirely. It's just going to be really something that I honestly think probably could have happened. Eventually Gojo's still able to deal with the actual barricade around them and deal with Hanami in his own way, just not killing Hanami in the same way, but it still greatly injures him, and they end up leaving still with a finger from Sukuna and the actual 3 cursed womb paintings that were still actively there and everything else like that. So they still managed to take the same things that they ended up taking in the same way. There's no really point to really change that in any circumstances. And finally, the events with like Keichizu and like Eso, the actual 2 of the cursed wounds, would really go quite a bit the same, since Yuji didn't actually end up using his curse like techniques and everything else like along those lines, and like using Sukuna a lot, like using Sukuna in that specific fight. He wouldn't really even need it. Even if he had it, he wouldn't need it, because at this point Yuji's just that much far stronger in his own sense. He has a better understanding of his own curse techniques and everything else like that, and is actually able to do quite a bit more. He's getting decently stronger as time is going along, and he's actively understanding everything along that. Most of those events between that exact fight would go fairly similarly, but it would just kind of obviously really derail as time goes along. Megumi's still able to do everything else like that, and Yuji actively knowing a lot more would have a little easier time, but him not having Sukuna would obviously cause him not to actually eat Sukuna's finger at the end. There's no point in that ever happening, and they would be able to actively just start really collecting Sukuna's fingers because they have anything else like that. They lost one of Sukuna's fingers in the first place, so now they got it back, and that wouldn't really be any real main issue and concern. And the main thing that I'm talking about maybe derailing is there is a chance that maybe one of them could have survived or anything else like that, but that's really just not a real factor in any kind of stances like that, because obviously Yuji doesn't really need it anymore, and Yuji's getting extremely far a bit stronger. And even before this, Todo, Mai, and almost basically everybody had already recommended for those three specifically to be upgraded to a grade 1 status. Specifically just because like Yuji's already extremely talented, extremely strong as is, and has insane amounts of strength compared to anybody should normally have. So the fact that they're even encouraging in this and talking about this is just something that really shows to effort about exactly how well and how strong this group of tree is. But yeah, what did you guys think about this? What do you think would have happened if Yuji never ate Sukuna's finger? And I'm not talking about he would have just died and nothing would have happened in this story, because yes, that obviously is something that could have possibly happened, but let's be fun about it. Comment down your opinions on what possibly could have happened if Yuji never ate Sukuna's finger. But if you guys did enjoy this video, as I've already said, leave a like, maybe subscribe, maybe hit that notification bell, comment down and everything else like that, and just tell me what you guys thought about this video and give me some other video ideas entirely. But I will see you on the next video. Peace.